The moment Ava Sinclair walked through the towering glass doors of Kestrel Enterprises, the air seemed to shift. The city's noise outside melted into an eerie quiet, replaced by the hum of polished ambition. She had heard the stories. Every assistant who tried to work for the enigmatic billionaire CEO, Orion Vale, had quit within a week. No one lasted, not even the most resilient. Yet here she was, trembling with equal parts fear and determination. Little did she know this week would test the very boundaries of her heart. Before I dive deeper, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the transformative power of empathy, pause for a moment, like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to Soul of Light. Trust me, this story deserves to be felt by everyone. Ava had grown up in a small, sun-bleached town where dreams were whispered in the quiet of libraries rather than screamed across boardrooms. She had clawed her way to this city, juggling 3 part-time jobs and late-night classes, and the opportunity to be Orion Vale's assistant felt like a culmination of every struggle she had endured. But the moment she stepped into his office, she understood why the warnings existed. Orion was magnetic in the way only truly powerful men could be. His presence demanded attention, his eyes dissected every thought, and his silence carried a weight that suffocated. The first day was chaos. Papers flew like rebellious birds across the marble floor. Calls rang endlessly. Meetings overlapped in impossible schedules. Ava's hands shook as she juggled calendars, emails, and impossible demands, while Orion leaned back in his leather chair, watching her with an unreadable expression. The others, past assistants, had crumbled here, unable to endure the unrelenting pace and the cold precision of his world. Yet Ava refused to crumble. She reminded herself of every small victory that had brought her here, every late-night shift, every bill paid, every discouraging comment she had defied. By the 3rd day, her fingers moved faster, her mind sharper, anticipating his needs before he voiced them. She had always been one step behind perfection, but here she found herself chasing it like a lifeline. It wasn't long before she noticed the cracks behind Orion's armor. A brief flicker of vulnerability when he thought no one was watching. A softening of his jaw when a particular client complimented her work. And once, Ava saw a single, almost imperceptible tear stain on the cuff of his sleeve. She didn't understand what had wounded him, but something deep and human lingered beneath the ruthless billionaire exterior. Then, as if fate demanded a test, the storm hit. A major deal, worth millions, was teetering on the edge, and the board demanded perfection. The night before the final presentation, Ava worked tirelessly, orchestrating spreadsheets, memos, and projections with a precision that nearly broke her. Orion remained in the office long after everyone else had left, pacing like a predator waiting for an answer that wouldn't come. When he finally turned to her, the walls he had built around his heart seemed to tremble. "Why do you stay?" he asked quietly, his voice stripped of its usual commanding edge. Ava froze. She had expected criticism, anger, even disdain, but not this. I stay because you deserve an assistant who believes in you," she replied, unsure if she had just crossed a line, "and maybe because I believe you deserve someone who sees the person beneath the company." For a moment, silence filled the room, heavy and pregnant with unspoken emotion. Then, unexpectedly, Orion smiled, a small, fragile thing that seemed to crack his usual stoicism. The presentation the next day was flawless. Ava's meticulous preparation and unwavering focus impressed even the harshest board members. Orion's confidence, often intimidating, radiated in a way that made others follow him instinctively, and for the first time he publicly acknowledged someone else's contribution, Ava's, without reservation. But just as triumph should have felt sweet, Ava's heart wavered. She had begun to feel something more than professional admiration, and she could see shadows of it mirrored in Orion's rare, private smiles. She tried to suppress it, warning herself that this was a man built on walls, unapproachable, untouchable. Yet love, stubborn and unrelenting, found a way. One evening, when the office had emptied and the city lights reflected in the skyscraper windows like constellations, Orion invited Ava to stay. He sat across from her, not behind the vast expanse of his desk, but at the small round table she had come to claim as her temporary territory. The conversation began with reports, projections, and mundane updates, but soon drifted into confessions. He spoke of his childhood, of nights spent in silent hallways, of pressure and expectation that had never allowed room for mistakes or tenderness. His words carved through the distance between them, revealing a man who had learned to live alone, to trust no one, and to guard his heart like a fortress. "I've never let anyone in," he admitted, voice low and almost breaking. "And I wasn't sure I wanted anyone to." Ava's eyes shimmered with tears she hadn't anticipated. Maybe the right person doesn't break down walls. Maybe they just help you build doors instead, she whispered, reaching out to brush a strand of hair from his face. From that moment, something shifted. Their dynamic changed from one of strict professionalism to a delicate balance of trust and intimacy. They still maintained the external image Orion, the untouchable billionaire, Ava, the diligent assistant. But within the quiet moments between deadlines and board meetings, love threaded its way through the cracks of their lives. It was fragile at first, a tender awareness in a shared look, a hand lightly grazing another, a lingering presence that spoke volumes without words. Yet love, as it often does, demanded courage. One late night, after a particularly grueling week, Ava confronted her fear, the fear of losing him, of being crushed by the very persona that had both terrified and fascinated her. She had worked so hard to survive in his world. Now she had to fight to be seen in it as more than an assistant. "Orion," she said softly, her voice trembling like a fragile leaf in the wind, "I don't want to be just someone who survives your world. I want to be part of it. I want to be part of you." He looked at her, long and unflinching, the weight of his own walls pressing against the vulnerability in her words. Then, slowly, he reached out and took her hand, an act so simple yet so transformative that Ava felt the universe shift around her. "I was afraid," he admitted, voice barely a whisper, "afraid that letting someone in would mean losing control, but with you, I feel like I've finally found a reason to take that risk." In that quiet moment, as the city slept below them, they found something extraordinary, the courage to love, not despite the past, but in acknowledgment of it. Their connection was no longer just convenience or curiosity. It was trust, it was warmth. It was the fragile, relentless force of human connection that refused to be denied. Days turned into weeks, and for the first time in years, Ava realized she had survived, not just Orion's formidable world, but the walls she had built around her own heart. She had endured the impossible week, the test that had broken everyone before her, and she had emerged stronger, not just as his assistant, but as someone capable of love, resilience, and transformation. One evening, as they stood together on the balcony overlooking the city, Orion's hand brushed against hers, fingers intertwining effortlessly. The skyline stretched before them, a tapestry of lights, shadows, and possibilities. Ava rested her head against his shoulder, feeling the steady beat of a man who had finally learned to embrace both vulnerability and strength. "Thank you," he murmured, not for the work, but for the courage she had shown simply by being herself. And Ava knew, with a quiet certainty, that Loven, expected, powerful, and redemptive, had turned, and they had turned with it together. If this story touched your heart, if the resilience, the courage, and the beauty of second chances resonated with you, please engage with this video. Like, comment, share, and let your heart speak. Your support keeps these stories alive. Before we end, let's take a moment to commemorate every brave soul who dares to love in spite of fear, who dares to believe in kindness even when the world seems relentless. Because sometimes love doesn't just change lives, it transforms them entirely.